Yeah, we're ready. Anytime you are.
Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, welcome back, everybody. My name is Robert Slewinski. I'm a biologist and genetic genealogist. I live in Roosevelt and in Carroll County, and originally from Chicago. Let me start by talking about a review of ethnicity estimates. Basically, these are results from 9 DNA testing companies. And I'll give you a little bit more background information. For those just joining or for joining for the first time, my name is Robert Slewinski. That's as I'm from Frankfurt. I used to live in Frankfurt. My clients are global, and I've given presentations throughout the Midwest, and including Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana. Now, those who have seen the advertisements for Ancestry, it's a little bit older, but comes out saying, I thought I had German ancestry. Turns out I'm Scottish. So there's interesting things that are happening because of the ethnicity estimate boom. People are finding out that they're not who they originally thought they were, considering if they had any family tree history that should have provided that information, but some people just don't have that information available. Now, on the other hand, I knew I had Polish ancestry, then I found out I was Eastern European and was disappointed. So you can basically say that you know where you came from and you have documentation, and your ethnicity estimate will be basically the same of what you already know. But secretly, you're hoping to find something interesting and new to play with. So many direct-to-consumer DNA testing companies include ethnicity estimates as part of your DNA results. Results can vary between companies, contain surprises, or even disappointment. So this presentation reviews the results from 9 different testing companies, one of which has actually gone under. Well, it's changed or restructured, I should say. Look at population data sets and which tests have higher resolution for specific geographic regions. Are you all excited about what's going on to happen next? Another boring slide. Introduction to ethnicity estimates. Your DNA, well, we got to do some background information so you have an understanding of what's going on. This is a little bit different than the comparison to people. You are now basically, your DNA is compared to a reference panel, and the reference panels are based on people, or their DNA from people from specific regions with deep roots in that area. And each company has a different number of reference panels. The more panels, the higher the resolution. Now, resolution, and you'll see the difference in resolution, whether it says you're from this area generically, from this part of Asia or Central Europe, doesn't kind of get close to where you're thinking, well, you know, it's going to tell me what ancestral town I come from. They're not there yet, but they're getting a little closer each year. Your ethnicity estimate should be compared to your family tree. Does it match up? If not, are the results accurate? Let's investigate some more. Okay. These are some DNA testing companies with ethnicity estimates. Now, in some previous presentations throughout the day, I've talked about ethnicity estimates, but we're going to delve a little bit deeper in this one. There's always a little bit of overlap in my presentations just to provide some continuity. We'll look at family tree DNA, ancestry DNA, 23andMe, living DNA, MyHeritage, Telo years, GPS origins, Insitome, and the Genographic Project. So family tree DNA has an ethnicity estimate. I've talked a little bit about that before. And that one basically is that it showed me originally, this is just a couple years ago, having just one ethnicity. And I had my story about a colleague of mine saying, wow, you're a thoroughbred. I thought I was more of an inbred, but that ethnicity estimate has changed over time and now has a couple of different locations. So the resolution has gotten a little bit better. This is called My Origins from Family Tree DNA. At that point, they were looking at different parts of the globe between African, New World, South and Central Asian, East Asian, Middle Eastern, European, and Jewish diaspora. If you are of Jewish descent, family tree DNA is a very good one to test with. They specialize a little bit in that category and have an interest in that as well. So if you have other ones that you are part of, these are some of the ethnic percentage makeups that they have at family tree DNA. Ancestry DNA essentially has their own set of reference panels, and there's like a battle waging between 23andMe and Ancestry DNA regarding whose ethnicities or estimates of ethnicities are better or more accurate. And they're really battling each other over the last couple of years, mostly to get your attention and to have you as a customer. A little history about ethnicity estimates with Ancestry. This is in 2014. This shows the areas of North and South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, South Pacific, Australia. What you see is that a lot of Europe is covered very well. A lot of people have tested from the European ancestry. There is an increased amount of number of populations in Africa that were covered. But for some strange reason, North America and South America are just a blanket, very poorly covered. And let's see how that changes over time. So in 2018, ethnicity estimates very increased number of populations and broader range in Africa, in Asia, South Asia, the Pacific, a little bit more increased in diversity as far as population reference panels, and just a little bit of a touch of change in South America, but almost nothing in North America. In 2020, the reference panels were updated again, and now you're seeing a much more diverse number of populations that have been tested and our reference panels associated with it. For some reason, the south part of South America has dropped out. I don't know why, but there is a differentiation now between the northern part of North America, central northern part of North America, and the southern part of North America, as well as they have different population reference panels. So they've updated their panels for Africa and Asia and Europe, essentially looking at in Africa, 110 regions. In America, they have 133 regions that they're looking at. In Asia, 63 regions, Europe, 838 regions, Oceania, 12, and West Asia, 5 regions. Now, these large blobs or polygons on there are not the fully representation of all the subregions or little regions they're looking at, but more of a conglomeration of them. So this is that part of Ancestry results that are your DNA story. In a previous presentation, my ethnicity estimate was like 95% Eastern European and Russia. And now, based on 2020, it has been decreased to 78%. Although it's a larger number and it's still a moving target regarding ethnicity estimates. But now I have an increased number of 15% in Baltics and a little bit of something, a smidge in some other areas as well. So a pre-2018 estimate, if we want to look at more carefully, shows a bunch of 95% European East and some Scandinavia, Europe West, Finland, Ireland, and things like that. That's pre-2018. Now in September 2018, their ethnicity estimates changed. Western Europe basically dropped out of my ethnicity estimate and became solely Eastern European and Baltic states. Now, what's interesting about this graphic is that it, let me get my little cursor up here again, cursor pointer. It does give you subgroups of where they think you are from or your ancestry is from. And it does give some timelines as well. When you're looking at the timelines, it gives time frames when there is migration from outside of the Americas into the Americas. If your ancestry is outside of the American continent. So let me see here. Now the estimate now from 2020. So you could see, let's go back here. This is 2018, and the estimate changed from there to this. Now shows a little bit of Western Europe and Western Central Europe popping back in. So Eastern Europe, 78%, Baltics, 15%, Germanic Europe, 7%. In this area over here. So they're saying their reference panel for Eastern Europe not only is just right here, but that incorporates all these areas around here. Now there's a lot of open land or undeveloped land in those areas too. So they're using a larger open space for that. But you can click on each one of these, like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and get a more of a detailed view of these areas and get a little story about the culture in those areas as well. The other thing that they've done at Ancestry is provide settler locations within North America. And so there's a whole bunch of these categories that show basically they come from a specific area, whether it's Europe or elsewhere, and how they have settled in the United States and where those areas were. And they typically provide you with an indication of what population you belong to based on your DNA and your matches. So migrations to the United States, in my case, essentially, shows that areas in the United States that had Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, and Lithuania, these are the areas where these people migrated to. There's also Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania, and these areas in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, also like the ones in the Chicago area, Detroit, is showing these populations where originally coming from Eastern Europe moved to in the United States. And we'll look at some personal ones too, where they have migration or communities essentially, or they're associated with the United States that moved from elsewhere across the globe. Also providing a timeline again, looking at different time frames within the last couple hundred years to show how movements were from ancestral lands. 23andMe also provides an ethnicity estimate. So there are a little history, basically regions in 2017 and 2018 on, let's say, North and South America, very similar to Ancestry DNA, and didn't have very much a diversity regarding the panels that they had. A little bit of diversity in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, but this is basically back in 2017, 2018. Refinements have come since then. This is 23andMe in 2018. My results indicated Eastern European, and then a very tiny amount of East Asian / Native American, and they're grouping those together a little bit, but they broke it out as basically broadly East Asian, and it's a very tiny amount. Anything under like 3% or like around the 1% range, I don't look at very seriously because that could change. Now, this is the only company that has given me an East Asian ethnicity designation. This is in 2018. Algorithms change. And in 2019, most of Asia's dropped away, and it's concentrated more on being Eastern European, a little bit of French and German, a little bit of Greek and Balkan, Scandinavian, Ashkenazi Jewish, broadly Northwestern European, and these are small percentages, broadly Southern European, broadly European. Since that time, they have actually increased their efforts to reduce the amount of broadly types of regions and to be a little bit more specific about them. So what's going on now? In 2020, they did change a number of things. They got rid of a lot of the broadleys down there, but they still, and they increased my, see if they increased that significantly, from 93 to 95% Eastern European, Northwestern European as well, with Southern European, Greek and Balkan. So they rearranged some things as well. But I think they're becoming a little bit more adept at recognizing where the genetics has come from. And the next steps we'll take is looking at specific areas that I know that my ancestry is from. Basically, when they have in Eastern Europe, they have a highly likely match, a possible match, and these are confidence with populations in those areas. So they're basically saying a high hit for Poland. So let's take a look at that. If 95.1% of my ancestry is Eastern European, this gives a chance to look at specific areas and evidence of recent ancestry from those areas. It's saying pretty high in the Poland area. And let's go on to the Poland area to see if this jives with what I know about with my family. For those of you who don't know, Poland used to be a former communist country primarily because it was taken over by Russia after World War II as a result of World War II. Poland is about the size of Arizona, and it has a number of states within the country. And these are called voivodeships. That's basically just the name that says that's a state. So in this graphic that shows where there's evidence of recent ancestry, weaker is the lighter, stronger is the darker colored. And it's going down to each individual state within the country that they feel that they have genetic evidence that shows that my ancestors more recently have come from this area. And the interesting thing is they nailed it. My father's side is from the area around Warsaw, and my mother's side is from this part of the, I think it's called the a Lublin void ship this is probably the Podlaski state right down here. And I still have relatives in both over here as well. So the reference panels are getting to the point where they're much more accurate. Now, there are outside influences from other countries, other regions where they make up your diversity. So there's also, and you have to understand that there's a lot of people have traveled over the last several hundred years. But these ethnicity estimates are not to go further back than just a couple hundred years, because past that, everything gets so diffused that you can't tell at that point where they came from too much further back. But I wanted to show you what the accuracy, and I was astounded by this without even telling them where my relatives are. Living DNA. This is a company essentially out of England, and they do ethnicity estimates as well. Their ethnicity estimates in the last couple of years have went from very detailed to a lot more like MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA, being a lot more conservative. And but they provide, and this is a recent screenshot that shows basically doing Ancestry for like $69, a well-being kit that usually with some health reports for $79, and the well-being and Ancestry kit together. Anyway, these are just references for you to know. There was a question earlier how much these kits cost. So Living DNA took a look at my DNA results and said, well, we're going to give you 95.5% Eastern European, a little bit of Northeast European, East Balkans. So this is the Balkans down here, Eastern Europe, including Poland and part of Russia and the Ukraine. Oh, let me see that. Ukraine's down here, a little bit of Russia on there. And a little bit of Europe, north and west. So basically in the area around Germany, Denmark, would be another area where they said that I have ancestry from. What I'm seeing over and over again is that there is a little bit of this Northwest Germanic influence that came into my family tree, and it's fairly consistent across the board. So this might be something that I may want to look into in the future in case I find something like that. But majority of what I'm seeing is in the Northeast Europe, 74.6% in this area. But they don't go into any more detail than that. And that's it. The thing is that we don't know how complicated your ancestral history is for ethnicities. But if it's not as complicated, they just may leave it into regions instead. So MyHeritage, they have an ethnicity estimate. They go through a whole thing about how they come up with different population regions and panels and things like that to provide your ethnicity. Now, it seems like with all this text, you would get a very fine, refined ethnicity estimate, but pretty much mine was not so much. These are the areas that they covered. It seems like they've split up North America a little bit better and South America. But there's portions of the world that are not even covered under them as well. So my end result for MyHeritage, which hasn't changed in a couple of years, is essentially that North and West Europe 7% and East Europe 93% that they're detecting over here with through MyHeritage. And you can look at not only that, but you can view the full ethnicity estimate that shows other populations as well. They have a little bit of a video you can play, which I can't do on the screen right now. And you can share your results with family members or friends. These are the other areas that they have panels for, including Africa, Asia, Oceania, Middle East as well as Europe and America. Okay. I tested with a different company that I didn't think I would test with. Telo is a company that looks at your chromosome health, which I thought was kind of gimmicky. They're saying basically as you age, the ends of your telomeres show aging, and depending on how resilient your telomeres are, will kind of give you an idea what health condition you're in. So I was a little skeptical on that, but they did say they did ancestry reports. Well, so does a number of different companies. But what they said is that they specialize in East Asian DNA. And I was a little excited about that because in a while back, 23andMe said that I have a little bit of East Asian. So I wanted to see if I can nail down the tribe that I came from East Asia. So I decided to do a Telo report, and this is what they gave me. So their ethnicity composition for me on a global population scale was that they said I was 100% European, with 32%, which is the highest percentage on there for confidence of high, of British Isles. A little bit of France, Iberian Peninsula, Italian Peninsula, 17% Russian, 24% Scandinavian. Well, the only one that I can see on there that is Eastern European is the Russian, and they have me down at 17%. Now, the medium level basically has still high percentage of British Isles and 16% of Russian and a little bit of Caucasus. So the question is that, are they even close enough at all? I think I have another slide here as well. Oh yeah. So, but they now go, that was from a global composition. And now let's go to a European composition that they came up with based on my DNA, that I'm still 100% European. And that the confidence level for high was that I'm 7.5% Eastern European, 5% Northern, 21% Northeast Europe. Okay, that's a little better. 21% Southeast Europe. I've seen a little bit of that in other ones. 7% France, 6% Germany, 7% Ireland, 22.78% United Kingdom still. So for some reason, I might be British, but I don't know it yet. So I don't know what happened with the results on there. Considering you've seen a number of other companies that have tested, they've poured quite a bit of money into their reference panels, and very few have come up with United Kingdom. Now, Living DNA a couple years ago did have me in several locations within the United Kingdom. They updated their reference panels, and all those United Kingdom, Ireland, England, Scotland, ethnicity locations dropped out. Okay. National Geographic. For a long time, the National Geographic Genome test was especially interesting to a lot of people. And as of that, the time when I took this, I was one of 960,000 people who took their test to find out more about their ethnicity and their DNA. So I was very happy to take this chance to take this test to see if, because they have some of the best reference panels across the board, they've done testing throughout the world regarding indigenous populations. And I wanted to find out if there was something that they would unveil to me that would be new and exciting. So I took the test. It provides information about my regional ancestry between 500 years ago to 10,000 years ago. And it has several videos on there as well. The journey of your past. And this is when I talked about Dr. Spencer Wells, who was director of the Genographic Project. And more recently, he's gone on to other endeavors that are still in the genetic community. I've met the man, very nice man, and very intelligent, and has done a very good job of whatever he's been doing. So I was expecting some amazing results. And what I got was this. My results are basically Eastern Europe again, just one bullseye, the thoroughbred here. So let's look at the text portion of what they explained to me. So they're saying basically I'm 100% Eastern European, and they give a little bit of a text that talks gatherers, and then essentially farmers, nomads, and coming that this group has the highest percentage found in Polish, Czech, Slovaks, Russians, Hungarians, Ukrainians, as well as some German, Austrian, and Balkan populations. Well, that's not all. They actually give some sub regions as well. So they have a reference population, and is my first reference population. I don't think it's necessarily the best one, but they find that I match the Bulgarian population, and that would, in essence, cover some of the southern Baltic DNA ethnicities I've gotten from some other companies. So Bulgarian Eastern Europe population is 73%, whereas I am 100% Eastern European. The other on the left-hand side for Bulgarian says these are some of the ethnicities associated with the Bulgarian populations. I share none of those. Next one. Second reference population was Polish. Eastern European, definitely 75% of the Polish population reference was Eastern European. There was some Jewish diaspora, Northeastern European, and Asia Minor. I just have Eastern European with no influx from the other ones and the other populations, subpopulations within that area. Very boring, I guess. It was amazing when I saw this one. Pinpoint your ancestry. We're just going to put a pincushion in the map, and it's going to say, this is where I am from. This is Home DNA's GPS Origins. GPS Origins offers DNA results with a level of specificity no other test can replicate. Discover your true story. Okay. Sent my DNA and my money. And after all these DNA testing companies I've gone through, I am now broke. So I think the tests are getting a lot cheaper, but what I'm providing you is with an idea of what testing companies provide a little bit better quality. Now, my ethnicity results have been pretty localized within Europe, but it kind of gives you still an idea of what the quality of the results may be for you. So I have come up in top 3 gene pools for GPS Origins. The first one is called Phenoscandia. Phenoscandia is located up here. Phenoscandia was one of the reference populations that Family Tree DNA used well over 10 years ago. And they have since dropped that panel or have incorporated into something else that has a lot more. So this, when I'm looking at this, is southern France and Orkney Islands. The Orkney Islands and stuff like that, that would be sometimes referenced as Acadian. And I'm looking at this knowing I've seen ethnicity results from over 10 years ago, and this is pretty much what was shown back then. This hasn't even been updated since those are early reference panels, not a very accurate ethnicity estimate as far as I've seen. I did show this before presentation about DNA migrations and migration routes from GPS origins. Now, here's the thing. I was thinking maybe the blue might be my paternal and the red might be my maternal. But then I look at because there's some really interesting, fascinating little graphics where the arrows move up the lines to each location. So it starts from west and goes up north. Let me use my cursor here. It started from the west and moved up north and then down south. I mean, it's amazing how they have this graphic where the arrow just goes up the side of the line and then comes back down. So you can shows you how your DNA moved from one place to another. And on this side, it starts in Vilnius in Lithuania and goes up to Russia. But then it says, please note the GPS origins test is an autosomal SNP test that is not gender specific. Although both migration patterns represent your maternal and paternal DNA routes, we do not differentiate which route is maternal and which is paternal. Well, at that point, I didn't know what to do with this information anymore. So, but I thought it might be a good idea to show you guys. Oh, yeah, migration route B, it shows latitude and longitude, so it's very accurate. This is their explanation of their population study. 500 populations, 10,000 signatures. Okay. Let me see, where are we at time here? Wait. This is a company called, well, the first time I saw this, I thought it was Insitome. And then when I called the company up, I had a question. They said, hello, inside of me. And so I went, oh, inside of me. Gotcha. Okay, so this is a company started by Dr. Spencer Wells and a couple of other geneticists, and actually had some really good promise as a startup. And their logo was basically I am unique, or they're saying. And I thought it might be interesting because I did know one of the people that was part of this company. I did pay my money to do the test, and this is what I got. So these are the ethnicity regions that they covered. Notice there's a little bit of diversity in North America and South America, not much. Europe seems to be well tended to. Africa seems to be well broken down. Asia is better at this point, but there's still some gaps in some of the ethnicities. But that's the way it was at that point, just a couple years ago. So my ancestry turned out to be Europe, 93%. Okay. Middle East, North Africa, 7%. Okay, it made me scratch my head a little bit when I saw that. No one else has reported a Middle East or North African DNA ethnicity, which I don't really care where it's from. I just want to know how they got to that point. See if I cover that at all. Oh yeah, here we go. So for the European, 93%, it shows that same red dot over Eastern Europe, 67%. It says North Mediterranean, 13%, Western European, 6%, which I'm getting in that 6 to 7% range from other companies as well. Finnish, 5%, Sardinian, 2%, Ashkenazi, 0, and Basque, and it keeps on going for other ones. Then it has the Middle East, North African is 7%. What else is here? Okay. So we've covered 9 different testing companies. Insitome is no longer being offered anymore. They just recently, this year, closed up shop, but they actually rebranded as a think tank for genetic genealogy or for genetics, and so they're working on different projects right now. But I wanted to compare the testing companies kind of like in one snapshot, so you can make a decision on what company you might want to go with for your ethnicity estimates. Now, ethnicity estimates for your genealogical research is pretty sketchy because you can confirm some things, but it's not going to show you an ancestor or common ancestor or anything. It's just going to give you some clues about where your ancestors may have been from, and especially if you don't know. So the DNA testing company, Family Tree DNA, number of regions compared, 24. And the accuracy, question mark, is my evaluation of that. It's accurate, but it's still vague. Ancestry DNA has 150 different number of regions plus now, includes migrations, those locations where communities have started up and settlements have started. And I would say generally that's pretty accurate. Now, 23andMe had originally more like 31 regions compared, and more recently they upgraded to over 150. So my accuracy conclusion went from generally accurate to accurate, that they nailed it. They were able to nail down within the states, within the country that my ancestors are from, that still are there, have the highest percentage of potential of being from. Living DNA compared number of regions 80, and they really specialize in the UK. If you have any ethnicity from the UK, have taken an ancestry DNA test, consider taking living DNA. Again, none of these companies pay me to do this at all. I do it on my own time. I spend my own money on these tests to try to give as an impartial or objective view of these. But I would say that the living DNA test is partially accurate to, now it's a little bit more accurate, but still vague because it doesn't go into like some more subcategories or subregions. But for UK locations, it is very accurate from what I've been able to see. MyHeritage has 42 regions, accurate but vague again. That means that it just shows blobs of regions. Telo years, 70 plus regions. They specialize in East Asian DNA, and I thought they were just not accurate at all. But I'm not sure, I haven't had anybody test with Asian DNA to see how accurate that portion is. GPS origins with 41 regions compared, not accurate at all. Insitome, 28, accurate but vague, and the Genographic Project with 22 regions compared is accurate but limited with the amount of information that they provide. And that kind of wraps up the ethnicity estimate presentation. We'll be accepting questions.
Okay, we only had one question. How do you save your DNA results to upload on the Family Tree DNA site?
Okay, these are probably results from another company that you would like to do to add to Family Tree DNA for another set of data to look at, if I'm interpreting that correctly.
That's how I interpret it too.
Okay, you would be uploading your raw data, and that means you go and type in on like Google, type in upload DNA data to Family Tree DNA, and that'll send you to a link at Family Tree DNA. That wasn't the last one. that shows you basically step by step. You fill out some information and then provide information of where you're, about your, not about your account. But what they do is they basically go from family tree DNA internally to the other company, and that's basically a transfer request, and then that information is then uploaded and then downloaded to family tree DNA. It was a pretty painless process. It takes a little bit of time, not too much, but it's not bad. And I would say that if you're with Ancestry or with 23andMe, it asks you which company you have tested with. So it walks you through that step by step to get you to transfer that. Now you're not taking all your data. It's just basically the data and uploading it to that. The data with the original company stay there as well. You're just making it basically kind of like a copy of it to the other company.
Okay, another question. What was the test that is best to take to find out Jewish ethnicity?
Any of the ethnicity tests, or I should say DNA tests that incorporate ethnicity, will provide you with a Jewish component as well. Some may separate it out into being, I do have a story about that, Sephardic versus Ashkenazi versus, there's one other one from the Middle East that will come up on the ethnicity estimates. Family tree DNA is one that has interest in Jewish DNA, so they would probably potentially have that information associated with that. And then Mizrahi is the last one, the Jewish group. I had a client that had tested their mtDNA, or the mitochondrial DNA, and had a match. She had ancestry from Poland, was expecting some interesting results, and then found out that her exact match was a woman or a man who had tested her as maternal DNA was from Baghdad, Iraq. And when she told her family that her exact match was from Iraq, they were unexpectedly horrified. But she smiled and said, "How exotic." So it was something that was very interesting. I did reach out to her match and was able to, as a go-between, saying that I was a genetic genealogist trying to connect two matches together to see if they could share some information, some family history, and also some maternal photos, so we can see if there's any likenesses, family likenesses. And so both the family trees didn't go far back enough, but there's definitely a connection within the last couple hundred years where and I did look up some history in Iraq, and at one point the Jews in Iraq were pretty much booted out, exiled by the government at a certain time in history, and there may have been at that point a migration movement out of there and up to Eastern Europe, and then assimilated into the culture over there. So, but Ancestry DNA should cover that, but family tree DNA does probably the best job that I know of.
Okay, I have one more.
Sure.
Can you talk about how the amount of DNA passed down through the generations works? An example, one of my cousins got much more of her great-great-grandfather's DNA than her siblings. Let me read that again.
Sure. There's two things that are going on. Yeah, sure, if you want to.
Can you talk about how the amount of DNA passed down through the generations works? Then she says recombination. An example, One of my cousins got much more of her great-great-grandfather's DNA than her siblings.
Sure. There are just two things going on. There's actually the 50% that you get from each parent, and then there have been articles that show, okay, I have three sisters. We've all tested, and we've all had different percentages in our ethnicity estimates, as well as different percentages from different ancestors as well. Let's say this is how it goes regarding the genetic information that's passed from your parents to you. Now, you're basically get approximately just about 50% from each parent at that point. Now, each of your parents get a certain percentage, let's say 50% of each of their parents, but then as each generation goes, that DNA, which in each chromosome, is not an exact replica. There's some what's called shifting around or recombination that happens. It actually helps with biological vibrancy that it makes the DNA and the organism that has the DNA a lot more vigor, has more vigor. So if you have that 50% you get from your mother and 50% you get from your father, every generation coming to them has had that 50-50, but as you go back, so you have 50% from your parents, 25% from each grandparent, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That's why you see fourth or fifth cousin, you see only like a certain amount of centimorgans that are there. That indicates how far back they are by how much you share with them. Now, the amount of sharing is not always equal. The DNA doesn't always break up into the same exact amount of chunks or centimorgans. Sometimes it breaks up into larger pieces, and that's why some people get a little bit more than others. There's no cutting board that allows you to cut basically each piece mechanically in the same amount that it goes out. So think of it, you're being like yourself cooking, and you're chopping up a potato, and that you're trying to make each piece the same thickness, but it is not the same thickness. And you're thinking that you can do it because you're the best chef ever, right? So, but that's basically what happens, is that as these DNA chunks separate during recombination, during this is the whole thing about meiosis and mitosis. So I don't want to go into too much biology, but when there's a copy made in the DNA, so the DNA copies itself, it doesn't always copy itself exactly 50% or 25%. It's a little bit inaccurate, and that actually is a natural thing. That's actually a good thing. It makes everybody unique at that point. So